Good afternoon and welcome to today's press conference. Our speakers today are Governor Tom Wolf, PEMA Director Randy Padfield, and PennDOT Acting Executive Deputy Secretary Melissa Petula. State Meteorologist Jeff Jumper is also available to take storm-specific questions. Governor?
Thank you very much, Beth, and thank you for joining us today. As you know, the remnants of Hurricane Ida brought historic rainfall to different parts of Pennsylvania all across the last several days. The storm began affecting areas in southwestern Pennsylvania. That's where Ida hit first on Tuesday, and areas in the eastern part of the state were affected all up into the morning of today. This was a rare culmination of events that caused record flooding in many places around the Commonwealth. And we know that many people across the state are dealing with the after effects of that storm today. I want to thank all of the emergency personnel who have worked so hard throughout this storm to keep Pennsylvanians safe. Many of you have worked long hours in dangerous conditions without a break. I know Randy has been 2 days since you've been last slept. And the dedication of everybody working in emergency management to protecting your fellow Pennsylvanians, you folks saved many lives throughout this storm. Thank you also to the Pennsylvanians, to every Pennsylvanian who stayed off the roads during this storm. Thank you for doing your part to help emergency responders work faster and work more safely. Throughout the Commonwealth, we're slowly moving from response to recovery mode. That's going to look different in each community depending on the damage from the storm and the ongoing demands on the emergency services and the emergency personnel. I know that today many people in Pennsylvania are hurting. We experienced a historic storm here all across the Commonwealth, and many people had to deal with rare weather events that don't normally affect them, their families, their communities. A lot of Pennsylvanians will be dealing with very hard emotions today. They're going to be dealing with hard emotions tomorrow, and they're going to be dealing with hard emotions in the near future. If you are struggling with stress from the storm, help is available. You can call or text our disaster distress helpline at 1-800-985-5990 at any time, day or night. That's 1-800-985-5990. We all have a long road ahead of us. It will take time to complete damage assessments and make assistance and resources available. But we're going to continue to share information about assistance as it becomes available in the days and weeks ahead. Right now, my administration is continuing to do everything in our power to support local emergency officials as they begin to assess the damage this storm has caused in their communities. And while we all need to have some patience as we move forward, the response efforts to damage assessment recovery are taking place as we speak. There are things that Pennsylvanians can do now to prepare for what comes next. Let's be vigilant. Thank you, and now I'm going to turn things over to PEMA Director Randy Padfield to discuss more. Randy?
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon. We know it's been a long last 24 to 36 hours for first responders and citizens of the Commonwealth who have been affected by Tropical Storm Ida. And I'd like to echo the governor's comments, thanking them for their service and dedication. The governor pointed out how dangerous some of this work happens to be, and I'd actually like to point out a situation that occurred last night while we were here in the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center. In one of the southeast counties, teams were out conducting flood evacuation and water rescues. One of the teams actually, in their boat, a number of firefighters got pinned up against a bridge pier by moving water. And ended up having to be rescued themselves and actually transported to the hospital for evaluation. So this is extremely dangerous work. And we actually like to thank the citizens that really heeded the message to not go out and not put themselves in those situations. The first responders have performed valiantly over the last 24 to 36 hours. Starting early yesterday morning and working throughout the day and overnight hours, local first responders, both volunteer and career, have tirelessly responded to numerous water rescue and flooding situations to rescue and evacuate those in need, open roads, clear debris, and restore utilities. And to give you a kind of a sense or context of this, one of the counties that we were working with last night on a conference call indicated that they believe that they had just in that county responded with their first responders to well over 500 water rescue calls in one county. Last evening and throughout the overnight hours as the storm progressed across the state, we saw significant impacts to the southeast portion of the state in the greater Philadelphia area, not only in the form of flooding, but also in the form of destructive tornadoes, which necessitated surging resources into that area of the state to effectively respond to the needs in those counties. While the water is receding in most parts of the state, we are still seeing ongoing flooding in the southeast portion of the state, some of which is surpassing record flood levels, and there are rescues ongoing. We also know that Ida has not only caused significant damage to homes, businesses, and public infrastructure, but for many it has significantly disrupted lives and families, as the governor has indicated. During the planning and response phases, we have also been concurrently planning for recovery operations to hasten the recovery of those that have been adversely impacted. This process has many pieces, but starts with meeting the immediate needs that individuals or families have for shelter, temporary housing, food, and security. Volunteer organizations such as the Red Cross, Salvation Army, religious organizations, and other voluntary organizations that are active in disasters are usually the organizations that work to meet those most critical needs first, but they can be supplemented by other programs. These programs are coordinated through your local emergency management office. Another phase of the recovery process involves a damage assessment for both individual damages and damage to public infrastructure and property, such as roads, bridges, and parks. This part of the recovery process is critical to justify requests for federal aid and support. Today, throughout the Commonwealth, individuals from your local municipality and the county will start the damage assessment process. Currently, we actually have overflights occurring to be able to capture a larger area of imagery in some of the most impacted areas of the Commonwealth. This is being done to be able to hasten the request process for federal aid. It is critical that if you've been impacted by this event, that you report your damages to your local emergency management coordinator or the county emergency management office. Other things you can do include contact your insurance company as soon as possible to discuss your coverage and begin your claims process. Take pictures of the damages you incurred for future reference and justification. Contact your credit card company or bank to report damaged, lost, or stolen cards. Save any receipts for items you purchased in support of your recovery. Identify items that you wish to save, and begin the cleaning process, which may include hiring a cleaning or restoration company, or, as I discussed previously, many of the volunteer organizations offer some assistance with muckouts and cleanup if your residence is adversely impacted by flooding. You can find these and many more tips in the After the Disaster Guide on the ReadyPA website at ready.pa.gov. Above all, we want those affected to know that there are many individuals working at all levels of government and within numerous organizations to hasten their recovery. The best way to know what is available and when it will be available is to stay informed by following local media sources or your county emergency management office on social media or other platforms. And now I'd like to turn it over to Melissa Batula, Acting Executive Deputy Secretary for PennDOT, to provide an update.
Thank you, Director Padfield, and thank you all again for our opportunity to speak with you all today. Again, I'd like to echo the thanks for all the agencies and our emergency responders and our dedicated crews from both PennDOT and the Pennsylvania Turnpike for their efforts as we manage the storm overall. We do remain in active communication with other agencies, other states, and industry partners. As others have said, we had significant impacts from this event, especially in the southeast and south central areas of the state, but this was a statewide event. Although all of our driver's license centers are opened as planned today, we still have 376 roads that are closed statewide. About 233 of these are a result of flooding, but we also have many roads closed from downed trees and limbs as well as utilities. And although most of these roadways are secondary, there are 16 major roads that are closed at this time. Most notably, Interstate 76 and 676 in Philadelphia are currently closed, and a complicating factor is that the pump station, which is currently under water from the rising waters on the Schuylkill River. So that right now is preventing us from pumping off water from these roadways. Now, PEMA and the DEP are assisting us in getting large pumps to this area so we can remove the water, but even so, it's likely going to be that these interstates may be closed for some time. At this point, our main focus is on response and disaster relief and to ensure that the most impacted areas of the state have the resources that they need. Then we'll be assessing the damages so we fully understand what we're dealing with. As the waters recede, we'll be conducting post-flood road and bridge assessments and then conducting bridge inspections when those conditions warrant. We are preparing to deploy bridge inspectors and other resources from lesser impacted areas of the state to those that have been most impacted. We understand that closed roadways and other impacts from the storm can certainly be frustrating. But please know we're working diligently, but we ask for your patience over the next few days. Even though the rains have stopped, it's still so important that the public remain vigilant and allow space for our crews and our emergency workers to do their jobs. Many creeks and rivers are still rising at this point. I also want to remind you yet again, please do not drive on roads that are covered with water. Even shallow, swiftly moving water can wash a car from the roadway. And remember that that roadway surface may not be intact underneath the water. And never drive around the barricades or road closed signs. As we mentioned yesterday, anyone who drives around those barriers that are intended to close a road can face increased penalties should an emergency responder have to respond. So again, turn around, don't drown. We also remind you that for those major road closures, the 511pa.com is a continued resource for the latest travel information. It's also available again for those smartphone apps by calling 511 itself or even through the Twitter alerts. And it's free and available 24 hours a day and provides daily traffic warnings, those weather forecasts, traffic speed information, and access to more than 1,000 traffic cameras across the state. So we thank you once again. Please be safe, and I'll now turn it back over to Director Padfield to lead the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. We will now take on-topic questions from reporters, and we ask that you please use the hand raise feature. Our first question comes from Tyler Pratt at WLVR. Go ahead, Tyler.
Good morning, and thank you for the press conference, or good afternoon, should I say. My first question is for the group, anyone equipped to respond with a follow-up for the governor right after. Can anyone give any hard numbers that you have right now about how many deaths occurred in the Commonwealth due to hospitalizations, or perhaps total number of search and rescue operations that have been underway since this began?
At this point in time, Tyler, it's a great question. We have reports of small numbers of unconfirmed deaths. However, they have to go through a confirmation process with the county coroner for us to record them as a confirmed death associated with the storm. As far as hospitalizations, we do not have that number currently. We can check, obviously, with our Department of Health. They have been activated with us in the Commonwealth Response Coordination Center. They may be able to track that information working with the hospitals systems. And as far as rescues, it would not be an overstatement to say that throughout the state yesterday, there were probably thousands of water rescues. As I indicated in my remarks, one county alone estimated that they had dispatches for well over 500 water rescues just within one county. So we get the reports of numerous water rescues. We also know that when the counties get extremely busy, it gets to the point where they become overwhelmed and they really can't record all of those rescues. So trying to quantify everything that occurred is rather difficult. But we know that every county that was impacted by flooding had some level of swift water rescue team or flood evacuation team that was working to evacuate those that were in need.
Thank you, Randy. And just one more question for the governor, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Governor Wolf, thank you. I'm sorry. You talked about this being one of those rare weather events coming up, but what are the impacts of climate change on a storm like this, and what can Pennsylvanians expect moving forward? Are we going to see more storms like this?
Okay, I am not a meteorologist, so keep that in mind. But the best thinking is that climate change has actually increased the intensity of storms and the volatility of our weather in general. We've had colder days and rainier events. Yesterday I saw one report that said that climate change is making the wetter parts of the country wetter and the drier parts of the country drier. So we're seeing droughts in the west of the United States and weather events like this. The other thing I think we've seen a number of times in Pennsylvania over at least my term in office is more localized events. This was a broad regional event, the result of a hurricane that came from the Gulf. But in many cases, we've seen a lot of heavy local weather that has created localized flooding. And those things, I think, are all a function of climate change. Now, before I get too deep into this and over my head, let me call on Jeff Jumper, who is the Commonwealth's the state meteorologist, to maybe opine on this. Jeff?
Thank you, Governor Wolf.
Morning, thank you. Yeah, we've been looking at some of the impacts to climate change. So typically when we look at the hazards, we look at how maybe a warming climate or maybe additional moisture plays a role in it. And in all honesty, we like to look at other areas that had a similar climate. So we look at the recent weather trends that have come out. They do the annual averages every 10 years. All of those numbers have gone up for temperatures and even precipitation. We're having, there's a lot of research out there of increased heavy precipitation events. While the rain overall may not be going up, we're getting them in shorter bursts rather than those longer periods of time. So we're seeing more of these flash flood events versus a traditional river flooding event. And on top of that, folks try to make comparisons to previous storms. It's a challenge because, 2 or 3 inches of rain over a community 10, 15 years ago is so much different than it is today because of land use and other development. So there's a lot of different challenges. It's a really tough thing for us to have to deal with at the Commonwealth, but I know that multiple state agencies have climate action plans and look at this, including our state agency with hazard mitigation. So we look at all of that coming together. We see those trends, and we try to address those to reduce as much impact as we can.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Joe Ciavaglia from the Bucks County Courier-Times. Go ahead, Joe.
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my question. I was just wondering if Director Padfield could tell us what county had the 500 rescues, water rescues.
I believe that was Montgomery County that we were talking to last night. There were a lot of different counties that we talked to, but I believe that conversation was had with Montgomery County last night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mike Rubenkamp from the Associated Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Director Padfield. Do you have any information on how many tornadoes touched down, what county or counties they were located in, and what kind of damage they might have caused?
I can tell you that we had reports of tornadoes in multiple southeast counties. I'll turn it over to Jeff because he's tracking that, but ultimately it takes the National Weather Service to be able to confirm those.
Yeah, good morning. I know the National Weather Service in Mount Holly is out today. They have a swath in Chester County they were looking at, one in Montgomery, and there were 3 separate areas in Bucks County that they'll be looking at least in Pennsylvania. I'm not certain if State College will be out in Adams County today, but those were where the tornado warnings were issued yesterday with some damage reports and some visual confirmations on some of them.
And one follow-up for Director Padfield. You mentioned the firefighters in the boat that got pinned against the bridge pier. Where was that?
We were working with Bucks County on that last night.
Thank you.
Any other questions from reporters? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Governor Wolf. Thank you, Director Randy Padfield, Secretary Melissa Petula, and Jeff Jumper. That concludes today's press conference.